How to change the timing belt kit and the Serpentine belt kit on a E7J635 engine. This is the 1.4 liter 8 valve of Renault. We will do this on a Renault Kangoo first generation. In the timing belt kit we will have the timing belt, of course, but also the water pump and its tensioner pulley. Regarding the accessory belt, we will have the Serpentine belt itself and its tensioner pulley. To have an easier access to the fluid coolant hose, we are going to remove the bumper, as it is quite easy, but I would like to say you that it is not mandatory. We can flush the engine coolant without removing the bumper, but it will make the job a bit easier. The bumper is only held by a bunch of screws, and those screws are very easy to reach. Once the bumper removed, we can reach the engine coolant hoses at the bottom of the radiator. So with a universal plier we can remove the spring retainer of the hoses and then pull the hose itself. Remove the expansion reservoirs cap to have a better flow of the engine coolant. Let's put an hydraulic jack under the A-shape part, which makes the link between the chassis and the engine cradle. Then we will put a stand on the usual position where we can lift the car. How to remove the Serpentine belt and its tensioner pulley? With an 1/2 inch ring spanner, remove the lower screw. Then undo the tensioner screw on the top. And then remove the last screw on the top. How to lock the crankshaft to the top dead center. If we take a look to the documentation, in front of the car, under the oil pressure sensor, we have a small cap represented here in red, in which we can fit a 8mm timing pin. To be able to put this pin correctly, we will have to move the crankshaft into the clockwise direction until the pin is inserted correctly. If we take a closer look to the front of the engine, we can see that this cap doesn't exist. So I tried to find information on the internet, but nothing. The problem is that if the crankshaft is not locked correctly at the top dead center, and if we try to remove the screw, the retaining screw of the crankshaft pulley, the engine will turn into an anti-clockwise direction, which is forbidden. So we have to find an idea to lock this crankshaft. We will mount back the wheel, then jack down the car on the floor. To lock the crankshaft, we will put the 5th speed in gear, and then we will be able to remove the crankshaft screw. So the engine will move slightly backward, but it's not a big deal. It will be locked quite quickly by the gearbox. We can now put back the screw on the crankshaft and then move the timing mark on the sprocket here in red in front of the lowest bump represented here in red. How to reach the timing belt covers? First of all, we need to hold the engine with some sort of hoist, because we need to remove one engine mount. So instead of using these special tools, we are going to put a jack under the oil pan. The right engine mount is held by 7 screws. And first of all, we need to unplug the coil pack wire and then to undo the gas recycling hose. We can reach now the screws. So it's a little bit tough at the beginning because these are metallic screws that are tightened into an aluminum parts. So there is some sort of welding between the screws and the aluminum parts. How to remove the timing belt covers? First of all, let's remove the lower cover, which is in plastic. It is held by 3 screws that you can remove with a 10mm socket. The upper cover is held by 5 screws. You have 3 small screws that you can remove with an half-inch spanner, and 2 bigger screws here in red that you can remove with a 5/8 of an inch spanner. First of all, we are going to align the crankshaft and the camshaft on the timing marks here in red. Then we are going to lose the tensioner pulley. So first the nut, then the tensioner pulley. After, let's remove the timing belt itself. And finally, the water pump. So put some marks on the old timing belt just in case, on the top and bottom. Then we can lose the tensioner pulley, remove the nut, then remove the timing belt. For the water pump, we need to remove 7 screws with a socket of 10 millimeters. Then the water pump comes to you. With a blade eraser and Scotch-Brite, you can remove the excess of sealant that we can have on the engine block. How to mount back the water pump? So first of all, we have to apply a high temperature silicone sealant on the casting. So here you can see the red line. This is the location where you have to put the sealant. On the right side you have an example of sealant. So I put a bit too much of sealant, but this is not the end of the world. On the engine block you have some prongs, some dowels, and we are going to fit the water pump on those dowels, these dowels. So first of all, snug all the screws on the water pump. So those screws need to be tightened at 10 Newton meters. So I don't have the proper torque range, so as an advice, you just tighten the screws just a little bit. You don't need to force too much on them. How to put back the timing belt. So first check that the crankshaft and the camshaft are still in correct position with the timing marks. Then place the stud of the tensioner pulley. Here is the tensioner pulley. So reuse the old nut. So here is a homemade tool to adjust the position of the tensioner pulley, to adjust the timing belt tension. So you have a sketch here if you want to make it yourself. So as you can see, we put the two prongs into the holes and then we can adjust the position. So for the timing belt, so first wrap it around the crankshaft, then the water pump, then the camshaft, and at the end around the tensioner pulley. So on the timing belt we have arrows. Those arrows show the direction of the engine, the rotation of the engine. So this is clockwise direction. So first wrap the timing belt around the crankshaft. Then around the water pump. Then around the camshaft. And finally around the tensioner pulley. So check that all the marks are aligned. Sprocket, timing belt and engine casting. And do the same for the crankshaft side. How to set the timing belt correctly? So we will need different special tools. This one that I don't have in red. So we need to make a tension on the timing belt with a torque wrench set at 10 Newton meters. Then with a frequency meter we are going to vibrate the timing bell until we reach 162 hertz. Difficult to say. So I was able to borrow a frequency meter to do the job. So on this frequency meter we have an inductive sensor, and the idea is to put a paper clip on the timing belt between the crankshaft sprocket and the water pump, and then we will make the belt vibrate. So we will make several attempts until we have the correct frequency. With a ratchet, turn the crankshaft 10 times and then recheck the frequency. Then you can tighten the tensioner pulley nuts at 50 Newton meter. If you don't have the frequency meter, in fact on the tensioner pulley we will need to put the two holes horizontally to reach the correct frequency on the timing belt. Mount back the timing belt covers the engine bracket and the camshaft pulley. So first of all we are going to mount back the upper timing belt cover. We will need 1/2 inch and 5/8 of an inch socket or spanner, and you have the torque display. So we will be able to tighten some screws with the torque wrench, but not all of them because the space is quite narrow. If you don't have any torque wrench, tighten those screws quite strongly because this upper cover hold the whole engine weight. Then it's the lower cover turn. So if you have, you can put some thread locker on it, on the screws. It's not mandatory, but just for good measure. And you have the torque to apply it on those screws. If you don't have any torque wrench, you don't need to tighten those screws that much. Then put back the engine bracket or engine mount. So you tighten those screws at 60 Newton meters, and if you don't have any torque wrench, tighten them quite strongly. Do not forget to put back the coil pack connector, the canister solenoid connector, and the gas recycling hose. You can now remove the stand and the jack under the oil pan. We need to remove the screws to put back the crankshaft pulley. So as before, remount the wheel, then put back the car on the floor. Don't forget to put the 5th speed in gear and turn the wheel. Now it's time to put back the serpentine belt, the radiator hose and the bumper. So for the tensioner pulley, you just do the inverse operation that you did for removing this tensioner pulley. So put back the 2 screws. Then you can put back the serpentine belt. To set the correct tension on the serpentine belt, we are going to use the same method that we did for the timing belt. So put a paper clip on the belt between the crankshaft pulley and the power steering pulley, and then make the belt vibrate until it reaches 189 Hz plus or minus 5 Hz. Here is the position of the tensioner pulley to have the correct settings. Then you can tighten the nut at 21 Newton meter. You can put back the radiator hose and the spring collar. And at the end, put back the bumper. Conclusion: this job is for intermediate handyman. Everything will go right as far as you stay calm and methodical. Be sure to have the 1/2 and 5/8 inch sockets, not to round the screw heads, and we have seen alternative methods to set the belts correctly. Thank you for watching and see you next time for more tutorials.